The sky above the mining station was always filled with thick smoke from the endless machines that never stopped working, and the humans who lived under the rule of the alien masters had no choice but to obey because they were considered weak and unworthy, and they were told that their only value was in labor and silence. And so every day was the same, with sweat and pain and nothing more. Among them there was one human who worked harder than most, because he believed that even in a place like this there had to be meaning, and maybe one day life could change. But deep inside he carried doubts, because the aliens who ruled here treated humans as tools and not as people, and he could see no escape from this harsh truth one day inside the vast tunnels of the mine. A warning bell echoed, and rocks began to fall from the ceiling, and the humans were ordered to move back quickly because collapse was near. But in that moment he saw something different, because among the crowd of aliens leaving the tunnel slowly, there was one figure who did not move fast enough. It was an elder alien, frail and bent, and struggling to keep balance. While others ignored him and rushed to safety, the human felt something rise in him, something stronger than fear, and he ran forward against the orders of the guards and against the flow of people. And he reached the elder just as heavy stone came crashing down. He pulled the alien out and shielded him with his own body. The ground shook and dust covered everything, and for a moment there was silence, only broken by the elder breathing weakly but alive. When the dust cleared, the overseers arrived, their faces cold and their voices sharp, demanding to know why he had disobeyed orders. They did not see his action as courage, they saw it as defiance. They accused him of wasting time, of risking equipment, of endangering the tunnel, even though he had saved a life. His own life meant nothing to them, and neither did his choice. They declared that his service was finished. He was fired, immediately stripped of his small wage, and sent out of the station. The human could not believe it. He felt his chest heavy, as if all hope had been torn away. He had risked himself for the sake of another, and yet instead of honor he was punished. He walked out of the gates, carrying nothing but the memory of the elder he had saved, and the cruel laughter of the guards who told him humans were foolish and weak, and that he would starve outside the city. Beyond the station was cold and full of towering alien structures where humans moved like shadows, always at the bottom, always ignored, and he walked among them with his mind full of questions. Why had he done it? Why had saving a life turned into a crime? Why did the universe see humans as nothing more than dust? Night fell, and he found himself sitting near the old market, where scraps of food were traded. He could hear whispers around him of how no human could rise, no human could fight back. And he felt the weight of despair pressing harder, but deep in his heart there was also something else, a strange quiet fire, as if his soul refused to bow. Even though everything seemed broken in that silence, he thought of the elder alien whose life he had saved. He wondered if the elder even remembered him, or if he too saw him as nothing but expendable. And yet he could not deny that when he had pulled the elder to safety, there had been a look in those alien eyes, not of hatred, not of superiority, but of shock and maybe even respect. The night grew colder, and he closed his eyes, trying to rest on the hard ground, but sleep would not come. His mind replayed the collapse, the stones, the dust, the moment of choice, and the bitter words of the overseers who had cast him out. It felt like destiny had slammed a door shut before him, and yet at the same time he could not help but wonder if another door was about to open, because something deep within told him that this was not the end, it was only the beginning. The morning came with a pale light falling across the alien city, and the human woke up with his body sore from the cold stone floor, and his heart heavy with the memory of losing everything in a single day. He walked slowly through the streets where alien eyes looked down on him with disdain, while other humans kept their heads lowered, too afraid to meet his gaze, as if his fall had made them fear their own place even more. He searched for work, but every gate was closed to him, and every overseer laughed when they saw his face. They told him he had been fired for disobedience, and no one would hire a human who dared to think he had the right to choose his own actions. He begged for scraps at the corner of the market, But even the lowest stalls pushed him away until hunger clawed at his stomach and despair filled his chest. As the sun began to set once more, he found himself near the same tunnel where everything had changed, and as he stared into the shadows of the entrance, he felt a hand touch his shoulder. He turned quickly, expecting a guard, but instead he saw the same elder alien whose life he had saved. The elder looked weak, leaning on a carved staff, his eyes deep with something that was neither hatred nor pride, but rather a quiet weight of knowledge. The elder spoke in a low voice and told him to follow into the narrow alleys away from the eyes of the city. The human hesitated, but the elder insisted, and so he walked behind until they reached a hidden chamber lit only by dim crystals where the sounds of the outside world could no longer reach. The elder sat slowly and told him that his act had not been foolish, as the overseers claimed, but instead it had been a spark, a sign that destiny had chosen him for something greater. Human was confused. He asked what destiny could mean for someone like him, who had nothing and was nothing. But the elder shook his head and said that long ago humans were not what they are now. The galaxy once trembled at the sight of them, but through trickery and chains their history was erased and their strength was hidden. The overseers feared that one day a human would remember and rise again. Human listened with disbelief, his mind torn between hope and doubt. He wanted to believe that his suffering meant something more, but he also feared that these were only the words of a fading alien seeking comfort. The elder then reached inside his robe and pulled out a strange device glowing faintly with light that seemed alive. He placed it in the human's hands and told him that it was not a weapon and not a tool, but a key to awakening what was always inside. The human felt the weight of the device. It was small, yet heavy, as if it carried centuries of secrets. He asked why it was given to him and not to someone stronger or smarter, and the elder replied that strength alone could not awaken it. Only a soul that chose compassion over obedience could unlock its path, and that was what he had proven in the tunnel. As he held the device, the human felt a strange warmth travel through his fingers, up his arm, and into his chest. His heart raced, and for a moment the room seemed to shift. The walls pulsed like veins, and the elder's voice grew distant as if carried on wind. He saw images flashing in his mind, men and women standing tall in the void of space, facing creatures of fire and storm with nothing but their will unbroken. And he realized these were humans, not myths, not lies, but a truth hidden from him all his life. The vision faded, and he gasped for air. The elder placed a hand on his shoulder and said that the awakening had only begun, and with it danger would follow, for the overseers would sense any change. They would not allow a human to carry power. The elder warned him that he must choose either to destroy the device and remain hidden, or to keep it and walk a path that could never be undone. The human sat in silence, his mind heavy, his stomach still aching with hunger, but within him something else stirred, something that was not despair, but a quiet flame of defiance. He thought of the laughter of the overseers when they cast him out. He thought of the other humans who lived like shadows, and he thought of the moment he chose to save a life when no one else dared. He clenched the device tighter and whispered that he would not throw it away. The elder looked at him with tired eyes, but there was also relief, as if a burden had lifted. He spoke again and said that the storm was already coming. The empire was breaking into factions, and soon humans would be crushed in the struggle unless someone led them to stand. He told him that destiny had placed this weight on his shoulders, not as punishment, but as the only chance for survival. Outside the hidden chamber, the night deepened, and the city roared with distant voices of trade and command. But inside that small place, only the two remained, the elder fading in strength, and the human holding the strange device that pulsed like a second heartbeat in his hand. And though fear still lived inside him, he could not deny that something had changed forever. He walked out into the cold streets once more, but this time the city did not feel the same. It was still cruel, still towering above him, still filled with eyes that saw humans as less. Yet he felt taller, even though his body was the same, because in his hand was a key, and in his chest was a fire, and somewhere in the distance, destiny waited with steps that could not be turned back. The night passed slowly as the human carried this strange device close to his chest, and every time he closed his eyes, he felt its faint glow against his skin like a silent heartbeat, reminding him that something had changed forever when the morning came. He walked through the streets of the alien city, and though he still looked like a poor outcast, he carried a fire inside that no one else could see. Searched for food but found little, only scraps thrown aside by those who looked at him with disgust. Yet the hunger that once broke his spirit now seemed smaller compared to the burning question of what the elder had told him. He remembered the vision of humans standing strong in the void. He remembered their eyes filled with courage, and for the first time he wondered if maybe the overseers feared humans for reasons deeper than simple hatred. When he reached the edge of the city, he hid himself inside the ruins of an old storage chamber, and there he studied the device. He turned it over again and again, but could not understand how it worked until one moment, when his thoughts grew focused on the memory of the collapsing tunnel and the choice he had made to save a life. The device pulsed brighter, and his body felt heavy, then light, then filled with rushing power. He gasped as energy moved through him, his arms trembling, and his vision blurring. He saw not with his eyes, but with something deeper. He saw lines of strength in his muscles and streams of endurance in his blood. He saw his body not weak, but resilient beyond measure. He fell to his knees with sweat pouring from his skin, and yet he felt alive in a way he never had before. He began to test himself, slowly lifting broken beams in the storage chamber that no human could move before, but now he raised them with effort, yet still raised them. He held them until his arms burned, yet he did not collapse. He forced himself to keep going until he realized his body was no longer the fragile shell the overseers mocked it to be. It was adapting, growing sharper with every push, as if it had been waiting all along for a reason to awaken. Days passed in hidden silence as he trained in secret, pushing himself further each time, and with every breath the device guided him. Though it never spoke, it pulsed in rhythm with his determination, sometimes showing him visions of ancient humans, climbing impossible mountains or walking through storms of fire, and never breaking. He felt their strength pour into his bones until the word weakness no longer belonged to him. But while he changed, the world outside grew darker. News spread through the streets that the Empire was breaking apart. Rival alien factions had begun to fight for power, and humans were caught in between, treated as tools for war or abandoned to starve in the shadows. Fear spread among them, but also whispers, quiet whispers, that one human had defied the overseers and survived. Human walked among these whispers with his hood low and his eyes sharp. He heard the cries of children begging for food. He saw men and women beaten for failing to obey orders, and though once he would have lowered his head and walked away, now he felt his hands tighten into fists because the device had shown him the truth that humans were not meant to crawl in chains. They were meant to endure and to rise. One night, as he returned to the ruins where he trained, he found the elder waiting. Though weaker than before, his breath shallow and his body trembling, the elder told him that his time was short, but he needed to know how far the awakening had gone. The human showed him what he could do, lifting broken steel and holding it until his arms shook, but did not break. The elder's tired eyes lit with faint pride, and he said that the galaxy had always underestimated the strength hidden in human flesh and spirit. The elder then spoke of the storm that was near. He said the factions would soon clash in open war, and the overseers would abandon humans to die because they feared what humans could become if left alive. He said that the device was not only a key but also a memory, a link to the truth of what humans once were, and that the choice would soon come to either lead his people or let them vanish forever in silence. The human listened, and though fear clawed at him, he also felt the fire inside burn brighter. He thought of the tunnels where he had once been a nameless worker. He thought of the overseers who had laughed as they cast him out, and he thought of the vision where humans stood unbroken in the void. he realized that everything had led him here. Not by accident, but by destiny. That night he trained harder than ever, pushing his body until the air itself felt heavy, his muscles tore, and healed stronger, his heart pounded like thunder, and through the visions, he saw humans not as slaves but as warriors, as survivors, as builders of something greater than chains. He felt tears in his eyes because for the first time he believed that humans were not less, they were more, and the galaxy had hidden this truth for far too long. When dawn came, he stood at the highest ledge of the ruins and looked out at the alien city with its towers reaching cold into the sky. He felt both small and infinite at once, small because he was still only one man, but infinite because he carried within him the memory of a people who could not be broken. He knew then that he could not turn back because the device had chosen him, and the Elder had warned him, and destiny was already moving toward him like a storm that could not be stopped. He walked down from the ledge, his step steady and his heart heavy, yet filled with purpose, because he understood that soon the overseers would know that humans were no longer shadows, and that one man fired for saving a life was about to carry the fire of all humanity in his hands. The days grew darker as the alien empire began to break apart, and the sky above the city was filled with smoke from battles fought in distant sectors, while fear spread among the people. Humans whispered of armies being raised and overseers abandoning their posts, and in this chaos the human who once had nothing now walked with purpose, his steps steady and his eyes filled with fire, for he knew that the time of hiding was ending. Trained until his body felt like stone and his will like iron, and with every passing day the device pulsed brighter, as if guiding him to a path he could not yet see. He kept hearing the words of the Elder that the storm would come, and when it came, humans would either vanish or rise. He felt the weight of that choice pressing heavy on his chest, yet instead of breaking him, it shaped him into something stronger than before. One evening, as he moved through the lower alleys, he found a group of humans surrounded by alien guards. The guards beat them with cold laughter, calling them weak and worthless, and something inside him snapped. He stepped forward without fear, and the device glowed like fire in his hand. His voice cut through the night as he told the guards to stop, and they laughed at him until he raised the broken steel pipe from the ground and bent it with his bare hands. The guards froze in disbelief, and the humans stared wide-eyed for the first time, seeing one of their own defy the chains. Guards attacked, but his body moved with speed he never thought possible. He dodged and struck back, and though the fight was brutal, he did not fall. He sent them fleeing into the night, while the humans gathered around him, whispering his name. Not in fear, but in hope, he told them that they were not shadows, and they were not slaves, and that their strength was hidden but waiting to rise if only they dared to believe. From that night, word spread across the hidden corners of the city that one human had stood against the overseers, and more humans began to gather around him, at first a handful, then dozens, each carrying scars of labor and despair, yet also carrying sparks of faith. They trained in secret with him, lifting stones, running through the ruins, learning to fight not with weapons alone, but with the fire of unity that the overseers had always feared. The Elder came once more, his body weaker than ever, his breath shallow, but his eyes still burning with wisdom. He told the human that this was the beginning of rebellion, but not yet the end, because the truth was deeper than even he had known. He revealed that long ago humans were not only survivors, they were conquerors. They had walked among the stars free and strong until the Empire betrayed them and erased their history. Fearing their endurance, fearing their ability to adapt and overcome anything, the human felt both anger and pride. Anger that his people had been robbed of their true story. Pride that he now carried the chance to bring it back. He swore to the Elder that he would not let humans vanish again, and the Elder placed a trembling hand on his shoulder, saying that destiny had always waited for this moment, even if it took centuries to return soon. The city boiled with tension as alien factions clashed in the streets, and humans were left abandoned Once more many were slaughtered in the chaos while others fled in despair. But those who had heard the whispers came to him and stood ready. He led them through the alleys, striking back at guards who tried to enslave them, rescuing the weak and gathering food and weapons until the humans who once crawled in silence now moved with courage in their eyes. But the overseers took notice and declared him a traitor to the empire. They sent hunters to capture him, but each time he fought and escaped. The device guiding him with visions of strength and survival, he grew into a leader. Not because he sought power, but because he refused to bow, and others followed because they saw in him what they had forgotten in themselves. The elder spoke one final truth before his strength failed completely. He said that the device was not a gift from aliens, but a relic of human origin, proof that long before slavery, humans had forged their own path among the stars. It had been hidden to keep the memory buried, but now it had returned, and with it, the chance for freedom. The elder told him to be ready for sacrifice, because freedom never came without cost. The human held the device tighter than ever, his heart filled with both fear and fire. He knew the final battle was near, because the factions would soon send armies into the streets, and in that storm humans would either rise or be erased. Forever he gathered his people in the ruins and told them that they had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. He told them that their children deserved more than chains, and their dead deserved more than silence, and they cried out with voices that shook the night. As dawn broke, the first wave of soldiers marched into the human quarters, their weapons bright and their eyes filled with contempt. But instead of finding shadows, they found men and women standing together, led by the one they had cast out long ago, the one who had been fired for saving a life, the one who now carried the fire of destiny in his hands. Clash began with thunder as the humans charged forward, not with fear but with fury, their unity stronger than steel, their endurance shocking the soldiers who had believed them weak. And as the fight raged, the device glowed brighter, guiding their leader through every strike, every step, every breath, until the battlefield became more than a fight. It became a revelation that humans were not broken, they were unbroken, and the galaxy would see it once more. And as the sun climbed higher, the war for freedom had begun. Morning sky was red with smoke, and the sound of war echoed through the streets as humans who had once lived like shadows now stood with fire in their eyes. The soldiers of the Empire came in endless waves, their armor shining and their voices filled with contempt as they shouted that humans would be crushed once and for all. But the humans did not bow. They lifted their makeshift weapons and raised their voices in defiance, because for the first time in countless years, they believed they were more than slaves. The human who had once been fired and cast out stood at the front, his body battered, but unbroken, the strange device glowing in his hand like a living star, guiding his every step. He remembered the elder's words that freedom would demand sacrifice, and he felt the weight of those words in his chest, but he did not tremble. He raised his arm and gave the call to charge, and the humans roared as one, a sound that shook the air and made even the soldiers hesitate. Clash was brutal, steel against flesh, fire against stone, screams filling the narrow alleys, but the humans fought with a strength the soldiers had never seen. They took blow after blow and still rose again, their endurance turning fear into fury, until the soldiers who had mocked them began to falter, confused by the resilience of those they had always called weak and worthless. The leader moved like a storm, his strikes guided by visions from the device, every movement flowing with purpose. He broke through lines that seemed impossible to cross, and everywhere he went hope followed. He saw men and women who had once bowed now fighting with courage that lit the battlefield. He saw children hiding but no longer crying, because they could hear the voices of their parents rising like thunder. The battle was not without loss. Many humans fell there, blood staining the stones, yet even as they fell, they cried out that they were free, and their voices carried on the wind, giving strength to those still standing. The leader felt their sacrifice burn in his heart, and it pushed him further, even when his body screamed with pain. At the height of the battle, a great figure appeared, an alien, Commander clad in armor of black light his weapon. Burning like fire, he looked down on the human leader and declared that humans were nothing but insects and that this rebellion would die with him. The soldiers cheered, but the humans stood silent watching as their leader faced the commander. Alone the fight shook the ground. The commander struck with power that shattered walls, but the human endured. He felt his arms break and heal in waves of agony. He felt his breath tear from his lungs, but still he stood. The device glowed brighter than ever, and visions filled his mind of countless humans across time, unyielding in the face of storms and fire. He realized then that he was not alone. He carried all of them within him. A final cry, he drove forward not with anger, but with the strength of every sacrifice made that day. He struck the commander down, his weapon breaking the alien's armor, and the fire of his people burning through the silence. The soldiers froze in disbelief, their leader defeated by one they had called weak, and the humans roared with a voice so loud the city walls trembled. The soldiers broke and fled their lines, shattered by fear, while the humans pressed forward not with chains, but with courage. They claimed the streets, they claimed the towers, and for the first time, they claimed their place not as tools, but as people. The rebellion had become victory. When the dust settled, the elder was brought forward, weak and fading, his body trembling, yet his eyes filled with light. He looked at the leader and whispered that the storm had passed, but a new dawn had come. He said that humanity had proven the truth that could no longer be buried, and that destiny had chosen. Well, his last breath carried words of blessing, and then he was gone, leaving silence, heavy with sorrow, yet also filled with pride. The humans buried their fallen with honor, and their leader stood among them silent, his heart torn between grief and hope. He remembered the day he had been cast out for saving a life, and he thought of how far he had come, fired for compassion, yet chosen for destiny. He looked at the city once filled with chains, now echoing with freedom, and he knew the elder had been right, that bigger plans had always waited for him. Device no longer glowed as brightly. It rested in his hand like a quiet flame, as if its purpose was complete, yet he kept it close. Because it was not only a key, it was a memory, a reminder that humans had always carried strength within them, even when the galaxy tried to erase it. He raised it high before his people, and they lifted their voices, swearing that they would never crawl again. The days that followed were filled with struggle, rebuilding homes, healing wounds, but they were no longer shadows. They stood in the open with pride. The other alien factions watched in silence, some in fear, some in respect, because they had seen what humans could do when united. They had seen them rise from nothing and claim victory when none believed it possible. The leader walked among his people, not as a master but as one of them. He shared their hunger and their labor. He carried their grief and their hope, and every time doubt touched his heart, he remembered the elder's final words, and the fire inside grew steady once more. He knew that the road ahead would not be easy. The Empire would return, the galaxy would not forget, but neither would humanity, and now they would never face it. On their knees one night, as he stood upon the highest ledge of the ruins looking at the stars, he felt the weight of destiny again. But this time it was not heavy, it was steady. He whispered that he had once been fired for saving a life, but that choice had begun a path that led here, a path that proved humans were not weak and not forgotten. He smiled faintly as the stars shone brighter, and he knew that the story of his people had only just begun. And with that thought he turned back toward his people, the sound of their voices rising behind him, not in chains, but in freedom, carrying into the night like a promise that could never be broken. The end.